Okay, a wonderful evening. How's everybody feeling on a Friday evening here? Any party plans right after this? Yes, some heads are nodding. Great, cool. We will definitely be missing Shweta. We would have really hoped for her to be here as well, but such is the case. So Ashish and I are gonna get into a conversation, and I hope that you guys will find it interesting. We'll try to keep it very conversational. We were chatting last evening as well, and we didn't want it to be like a monologue or just two people talking on a YouTube channel for you. So we will just probably try to ask you in between as well. If you have any inputs, feel free to. The topic is actually very, very interesting. And I was listening to Senthil's keynote as well, and how we are evolving a lot in terms of technology. The typical role of a CMO, I think, has evolved to a very large extent. I've been working in the marketing space for almost over a decade now, been into IT earlier, and it has just drastically changed right in front of me, right, all the time. And like in my introduction, you heard that I'm part of a college right now. So we have MBA as one of the streams as well. And there are a lot of students who study marketing. And one of the typical confusions is that what is the kind of role they should look for when they're joining marketing. So, this evolution has already led to a lot of new questions that we face every day on our table. And that is why this topic of, inside the mind of a modern CMO, I really wish I can get into it. Because, normally even if I'll ask Ashish or we have a side conversation, I'm sure it's still very difficult to get into that real situation which you face when you land into the office and you're dealing with those problems every day. But we'll try to address few of the areas, and let's see if you're able to break this down. But before I do that, can I have a little show of hands that how many people are here from the brand side? Like you're working in the brands, okay. And how many people are in the agency side? Okay, mostly from the agency side. So we as brand CMOs would have made your lives very difficult. I did that. I'm guilty of doing that as well. And I'm assuming the rest of the folks are from neither the brand side and the agency side as a marketer, but obviously you're part of some kind of a role. So to just to start with, Ashish, today, let's not try to identify and give a definition to this role, but just as an icebreaker, how do you feel being into the marketing space, or let's say how any CMO would feel right now in 2026? Like a very generic starter. What are the honest feelings of a CMO right now sitting in 2026 where the world is moving the way it is?
Sure. Thanks. Before we get into that, just wanted to tell you that I started my CMO role about 25 years, as in a marketing role about 25 years back, and it's been about more than 10 years in a CMO role. And it's been across B2B and B2C environments. Now, a lot of things which I say, since when I started marketing, like I said, 25 years back, to what marketing is now, there's a sizable difference, right? Marketing has changed, a lot over the years. So I think, and this topic is very interesting to me because it talks about a modern CMO and what's going on right now. So I'll try and do full justice to it. So to start with, Nidhi, how it feels right now, I think it feels more as an integrator. Integrator of not only brand, but revenue and technology. So it feels more as an integrator in the brand, revenue, and technology space, where the growth expectations are immediate. That's very, very clearly there for a CMO right now. But in an era or in an environment where sustainable growth takes some time to come, but the immediate growth expectations are already around.
Right.
That's
in
all
fact,
described.
that's exactly, that reminds me that whenever you're in a marketing space, and we see this conversation happening a lot on social media and on LinkedIn as well, that the marketing, it's high time that the CMOs or the marketing leaders gets a table on the board, right? Because they used to never be considered as part of the important decision maker in terms of the revenue for the company. But now it has become like kind of a given mandate, right?
Absolutely.
And that is where my next question comes into that. In the last 5-6 years, we have seen that this role has evolved a lot in terms of, are we calling a CMO a growth leader, a tech leader, a storyteller, what that person is really doing? Because it is no longer limited to just the principles of marketing, right? Every marketing conversation that we have, ROI is something which I'm sure is going to pinch a lot of people here, right? Because so you cannot, I mean, it is by nature, by principle, it is a creative domain, right? That's where we start the marketing conversations. That's how we do hiring. We actually get educated about, right? Whether become a designer or a content writer and stuff. But now when the question automatically drills down to what is the ROI, what is the impact, and then technology, which Senthil has very well told us as well, technology taking a larger part of it. Yeah. So what exactly is a CMO now? What is a larger part of their role? Like when we sit down inside a board conversation, are we able to drive storytelling or a tech decision or growth?
Yeah, sure. Very, very good question, I would say. To reflect on that, I think these 5 years again, while you're talking, I started with 25 though, but even these 5 years have brought in a lot of difference to what a CMO used to do. So earlier I would say it was more about managing the brand, being the custodian and owner of campaigns. I think it's moved beyond now. It's moved beyond, I think, from a CMO role, it's more than managing a function. Yeah. Like you rightly said, it's about getting a seat at a table where the entire board is around. So it's largely kind of come to being a growth orchestrator, if I can say that. That's what I see a CMO as. Where you're responsible for very, very clearly for business outcomes. And when I say business outcomes, I mean talk in terms of pipeline, talk in terms of revenue, talk in terms of efficiencies that's required for a modern CMO right now. So that shift has definitely happened. Yeah. Again, as we speak, the environment around is becoming complex by the day, right? We have more and more data, we have more and more channels to kind of go and talk to. And the role of AI, we heard the speaker earlier, the role of AI that's kind of increasing by the day in a CMO's life. So given that, I think the role of a CMO right now is also kind of enabled by tech a lot, which kind of helps you build scale. And for sure, as a storyteller, as a CMO, you can't say, no, I'm not a storyteller anymore, I just talk numbers. No. You have to be a storyteller, and that helps you build the brand, which to me is pretty critical even in the right, even in the current circumstances.
Yeah. And that is actually, I'm probably quoting the line wrong, and I don't know if Senthil is still here. There was a line very beautiful in his presentation that around noise and progress, there was something like that, right? So, typically, like if I go back to my fundamentals of marketing, I really, really used to focus a lot on creativity. And that, because that's what my next question is that, what amongst this all noise that we hear, and we all do it as a consumer as well. Forget about being a brand side or a agency side, but as a consumer also we are part of that noise, right? But what are some of the things that we can still do as a marketer to cut through that noise? What are some of the basic principles, probably, like you've been here for so long in this industry, but there would be some things that you have carried forward to still be able to manage through that noise? Because everybody is on social media, everybody is putting content, but what is something which principally a marketer can still think of, which makes you cut through this noise?
Sure. See, my take here is that while a lot has changed, there's a lot of AI coming in, I think specifically for a CMO, or if I talk from that perspective, the fundamentals remain same. So any strong marketing or which is not noise, has to be backed through a some basic fundamentals. I'm sure you would have all heard it, but I'm repeating it for the sake of it. Yeah. What does your brand stand for? Whom are we serving as a brand, right? What is the business outcome we are solving for? What is the impact that it will create? Right. So these fundamentals, I think, are going to stay and still there, very much in. But as of now, the challenge which is there is you surviving in in middle of a lot of noise. And where the noise is coming from. It's coming from a lot of content creation, and thanks to AI enabling it in terms of coming in terms of quantity as well, and quite fast with speed. Yeah. And to me, you have to separate your marketing from noise in the sense that if let's say we see a lot of moment marketing, we see a lot of memes nowadays from all brands going out. But again, it has to be backed by strong fundamentals, the ones that I said earlier. If to me, if your people or your customers remember the meme, but not your brand, then it's not marketing. It's just content there.
Yeah.
So that's a difference I would put between noise and true marketing.
Absolutely, because not just in terms of the amount of being produced because of technology, but to an ease of access of everything.
Yes.
Like right now, sitting here, we all can produce one reel and just put it up, right?
Absolutely.
Forgetting what this event is all about and all that stuff. But guys, I know very few audiences left here, but still, are you guys really facing those problems when you sit down in your conversations, whether at the board, whether in your internal teams, that there's still a lot of push to keep creating that noise because there is this vanity metrics that we all have to chase. So a little show of hands, that are you still feeling that pressure? Because I used to do a lot in my brand life, that where especially when I'm into a B2C. B2B is still a little different, but when we are especially into a D2C market or a B2C, there is this continuous pressure to cut through that noise because of the pressure of vanity metrics. So do we still see that? If there are few folks from agency, is that the thing that you keep getting from your brands? Senthil is raising it because I'm sure. So because, as an agency also, when I saw it, the immediate question is on ROI, even from brands who are just starting from scratch. They haven't even launched themselves on the social media. But there's such a rush to get those vanity metrics achieved. That's where, when Ashish is saying, we actually lose the entire DNA and the core of that brand, right? So that is one thing that we feel, and that is exactly, which my question is, we all get some budget, whether it's 1 lakh, 1 crore, 100 crore, right? Now, typically when I was working with Jio Savan, that used to be a very big question in our head when we used to meet a brand, that how does your brand mix looks like, right? Is it still very focused on performance marketing, which has become such a common word now? Or is it still focused a lot around brand building? Because, sometimes you choose activities which are purely for brand building, right? And sometimes there are activities where you are under the pressure of an ROI. So when you look at it, and wherever you have handled different budgets, Ashish, and maybe you can give us a little idea around maybe different industries, B2B or B2C and others, that how much of the balance between these two areas of building a brand for longevity or a performance marketing, which could be for a very short-term result. What's your take on that?
Sure, and I think that's a very pertinent question in today's age. Performance versus brand marketing.
Yeah.
And most of us have kind of heard, everyone in this room, I'm sure, I've heard all of these terms. So in my view, when it comes to budgets, and like you asked, how much on performance, how much on brand, I would say it depends on the context. And like you rightly said, might vary by a D2C versus a B2C and a B2B. So, maybe let's take a context here. A D2C brand trying to establish themselves at one point of time in the market, where there are very high growth expectations. You have to, when I say high growth expectations, I'm not talking, 10%, 20% like we typically talk in MNCs. That's how we kind of negotiate our annual targets. We are talking 10x, 20x here. And when you have to grow so fast and then set it up, so, in those cases, it has to be more performance marketing. Has to be more performance marketing because that's a given. You have to show instant results, and that's where nothing can beat performance marketing. Now, think about this phase, and sometime later, while you continue to build, and beyond a point, it starts getting called burn, right? In the e-commerce world. What starts happening? Beyond a point of time, you'll see your CAC starts rising. And I can use these terms, right? CAC, everyone knows. So, okay, I know I have a good audience there. So somebody said no. Okay, sorry. Sorry. Okay, so I'll use these terms. Thank you so much. That gives so much of a breather. So your CAC suddenly goes high, right? And that's when you suddenly realize, oh, we've reached at a level where we can't keep pumping money. And that's where the brand comes in.
Yeah.
And that's where you have to start building your brand to a certain extent, start investing money in brand. And we all know, I don't need to explain performance versus brand in terms of short-term or tactical versus a long-term stuff. So in terms of budgets, I would say it's very, very context dependent, Nidhi.
Right.
In the context that I said was very different. In some other context, let's say established brand, you still have to kind of balance. Think about brands like Nike. Think about brands like Coke. Why do they still need to, spend money on brand, right? So brand investments are always long term, and they still need to be managed in line with performance. So they have to go hand in hand. Nothing, and I'm not saying ignore one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what are
depending
your
on the
short-term
context,
goals?
yeah.
What are your long-term goals? At what stage of the business you are, right? Like you just gave example of two classic brands. Why do they still need to? But there's just a recall, right? They're probably not even competing anymore, but they just want to keep that brand presence alive. So, in fact, that is the reason, in fact, a show of hands can also happen here, that when you are taking such decisions, what primarily drives it? Like, is it data for you? Like when you're taking, whether it's for performance marketing or brand, is it something like that you rely a lot on data? Anyway, a lot. How much of an experience that you rely on, like in terms of experience of doing a particular activity or taken a particular brand mix? Is it focused on that this was the something that we experienced, this is the way we strategized it, whether or not very heavily backed with data, but that is something.
In fact, there was a very interesting thing, as you mentioned about CAC.
Yeah.
So there was an incident where the client said that, this is my strategy and this is where I want to go through.
Right.
And this is an international client, by the way.
Uh-huh.
And he's throwing money left, right, and center.
Interesting.
But then his CAC is increased to a level that
Yeah.
There are no results.
Right.
Like he's not garnering any kind of a result.
Wow.
So at that point in time, for him to detach from that kind of a result and depend on the data or
Yeah.
the research that the data is showing
Right.
is imperative for the brand.
Absolutely. So maybe there are times, sometimes, like experience, and the other point I was saying is instinct, right? Sometimes it might work that for you. And depending on then if you're doing it for a B2B, B2C or India, international market. So yeah, I mean, data is definitely very powerful.
And that's a powerful point which you just said. I think, so it is also about figuring out the right time when you want to step on the pedal for brand. Sometimes it might be too late. Like what you just said, maybe I don't know which brand or which case we are talking about, but sometimes it might just be too late for them to kind of now step the pedal on brand, because one is so used to performance. And then you're anyways short on money, then you think, oh, now that I have only, let's say, out of 100, $10 left, where do I invest on?
Interestingly, you mentioned about the early brands also, like established brands like Thumbs Up, Coke, all of these are still relevant to the market. But the brands who are entering at a very early stage, when they do such a thing, it becomes like paramount importance for them to gauge what's happening in the market first.
Exactly.
And if they are, like, say, into a unique gap, like for example, they identify a gap in the market and they have a unique stance, then it's a question in the ring. How do you think a brand should navigate that? Like, as experts of the brand,
Yeah.
how do you think we should navigate the brand through that?
See, like I said, so one is that timing, right? The other, I think, to my mind, the other challenge that I'm thinking of is the noise which she spoke about earlier, right? Now, one can create a noise, but in the whole bigger world of, a lot of noise being created already in the category, will you stand out? So that's where the brand role comes in. Now, if I again, I can go back to as many old examples like Liril and Lifebuoy and all of those stuff I won't. I will stick to the new age ones. I saw this brand Cred just now, on the board. Yeah. So many awards there, right? So if I have to talk about new age brands, this is one brand which I think has cracked the code on advertising in the sense that they've done something very different. That Indra Nagar Ka Gunda concept, which, bringing in Rahul Dravid, and then they bought David Warner also, is what I remember in one of the other similar campaign, another.
Kapil Lahiri, Madhuri Dixit.
Yeah, a lot of them. So known faces, and I'm sure they've spent a lot on the brand side, but what they're doing is they're creating a recall. Somehow you'll start remembering Cred because they're breaking the sameness of the category that's there. They're coming up with very, very unique, different stuff, which is different from how maybe the other fintech players are talking at this point in time. Yeah. So we've not spoken about it, but maybe I'm jumping. I don't know if Nidhi has that, but I'm saying that is also something which makes a difference. You have to have distinctiveness in your idea, because otherwise it's just noise.
Yeah, I mean, I give, sorry, what's your name? Niharika, thank you for so much for participating. But very interestingly, when we have been talking about Coke and all, na, a brand that comes right on top of my head like a radar is Lahori Jeera. They look at the storytelling, they just hit, right? Like, because this morning I get groceries every Friday. My dad goes out and is like, don't bring Coke. It's not because impacted by that ad, but it's like, try and get a Jeera because Jeera bottle now is the season, and try and get Lahori Jeera. Look at just the pure play storytelling. You're not seeing any digital advertising, but they just created a niche by that, right? So that power still holds because, and that's my, probably the next line of thought as well, that we kind of are underestimating our consumers a lot as well. Like, do brands are even kind of really sensitizing, understanding that how informed our audience is it. Like, there was a level that obviously everything is coming freshly on your Instagram feed and you're seeing and you know that there is a dopamine hit if I buy and all that. But I think we have even crossed that layer now, right? We know that there is an ample amount of advertising happening, a lot of content being thrown, a lot of competitive players. So tomorrow if I'm seeing a Babe Coof and a Soul Store t-shirt and a Snitch, I probably might not even be buying any of them. But maybe 3 years back, these were all very new things for me. Yeah. Suddenly I'll see a t-shirt which I've never seen in my life and I will like instantly react and buy, right? So are we kind of really now at the state that because brands are smart, that they're throwing this, but at the same time, consumers have also become very smart, right? So what's your take on this?
Yeah, agree. So one thing I would fully agree with is consumers are smart. And why I say smart is they're very well informed, right? And brands sometimes mistake this for, they may not doubt a customer's intelligence, but they sometimes doubt smartness. And where does just to say a little bit kind of on smartness, why we are saying consumers are smart, and I'm sure we'll all agree, we all are consumers as well. So I always, when I see it from a consumer lens, I also see myself, I see people around me, my family, and people who stay in the same community, etc. So when we have to buy a product, what are we doing right now? We are checking reviews. We are going to different platforms to check the pricing. We also, as smart customers, I've seen from a brand perspective, they call out inconsistencies very fast. Yeah. And I'm saying inconsistency in terms of your messaging and communication. So that combined, I think those make the customer very, very smart, or consumer, whatever we call it. Yeah. They are smarter for sure. And which essentially goes on to say that how do you tackle that? And like you rightly gave those examples, Soul Store and others. Yeah. Now think about brands who've been old in the space, and I don't know if these are right examples, but I'm talking Ellen Solly and Louis Philippe, and all of these guys are playing in the same space, end of the day. And if they're not active, so they can't ignore that space at all. I think where they might have an edge, and where, if I were to kind of speak from a big brand perspective, going back to the basics again. So how do you have very very clear brand linkage to whatever you say? Yeah. You can't say something else here, and the next campaign suddenly changes, right? Yeah. To have a very, very clear cultural awareness. Very important in a country like ours, where we speak multiple languages, our food habits change. So you have to have that cultural nuances built in. Absolutely. Right? So I know it finally boils down to the basics, but one thing which I can't deny is that customers or consumers are getting smarter by the day. And in the social media world, right, one thing is permanent, which kind of keeps the brand on toes. If you can guess, I'm talking screenshots here. Try doing an error and see how consumers catch you, how it becomes a trend. Yeah. And then the disadvantage right now, and when I started long back, we were talking about television advertising. Now we are talking digital, where people or consumers can take screenshots and make it viral quickly. Yeah.
Trend or a troll maybe.
A troll, whatever. Yeah, troll is a better word. Yeah. And the permanence of that stuff, keeps the brand on toes.
Absolutely, because they feel very connected to it. Like, is it like you just can't break our trust? That is the level they take it at. That this is something that we believed in. You kind of forced it in our head, right? And while you were just giving examples, I was just thinking of even brands like, because you mentioned, I think, Ralph Lauren and all. Even if you look at, I don't know how many of you shop from Zara's and Uniqlo's of the world, you would see that even if you land to their physical stores now, they always ask you at the billing counter, do you have an app or H&M, right? they would want you to download that an app, and not because Indians, for those brands are still, they would want to go and physically try that garment out. It's not a very Indian original brands, but they would want you to have it, right? I frequently face that, and now I already have an app, all three of them. The reason is that they would constantly want you to kind of surf through the new collections which are coming in, be aware about their products and all. It comes in your Instagram feed as well and all that. So even for that, so when we were initially starting that it is about storytelling, tech or brand, they are established brand. They have great storytelling. Like everybody knows that Zara stands for a particular thing, Uniqlo stands for something, but they're now trying to add up that layer of tech, even if, like in a very subtle way. So I think, and because when that's something I wanted to ask you, and because we've been talking about on the consumer side, is it a lot of emotional decision? Like when they make a decision, a consumer, is it something that is driven very much with the emotion, logic, or completely something else? Like if I'm, like anything that I know for that matter, it all depends on what headspace I'm in. Like let's say right now I'm tired, I go back, something comes on my feed, I need a dopamine hit, I'll just order a t-shirt which says, weekend aa gaya, right? But sometimes I'll then start to logically and rationally also think that, yeah, this t-shirt is not worth 700 rupees. Why did I order? And then comes a return cycle. Or there is something totally else, like anything that comes to your mind. As a consumer also, if you have faced.
Yeah, sure. I always look at it from a lens of a consumer, whatever I'll say here. So I would say both. Why emotions? Because those are things which kind of sometimes tilt you towards a brand. And we know a lot of brands and categories who thrive on emotional advertising, right? So emotions for sure. But we can't ignore logic, because that's where the rational part of the brain comes in and says, oh, have you seen the product? Have you compared it across? What about the pricing? How about the features? And that's where logic comes in. Again, would vary by category and depends on the context. But in my view, both will have a role to play in every category. Talk about a category like insurance. You will say it's driven more by emotional stuff, but I think there is logic there as well. With platforms like Policy Bazaar being around, people still kind of figure out, if this is my requirement, which of these players can offers me the cheapest stuff, and that's where logic comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think there's when you say something else, what comes to my mind is beyond emotion and logic. The third thing is meaning. Again, meaning. What I mean is here is. What does your brand stand for? What do people associate you with? And it is that meaning which drives loyalty, end of the day.
Yeah.
Beyond emotions and logic as well. Because then they form an imagery of yours, in their mind space. And that's where the established brands have an edge.
Right.
Probably.
Right. Yeah,
because... But again, even as established brands, you can't sit back and say, oh, we've been there for 20 long years, nobody can displace us. And we just discussed that industry of fashion where, there are a number of new players and they've started so well.
Yeah.
It's been a brilliant start for some of them. We saw some names just here, right?
Winning all the awards. And yeah, I mean, these things can, like when you said meaning, Prada went for a toss when they just launched Kolhapuri chappals at lakhs, and everybody, it became a right that how can they do that? It's Prada at the end of the day. Yeah. So yeah, people do, brands do those things. And that is when, I'll ask this, start this question about, AI genuinely playing the kind of role it is in this, or is it just overhype? I'll give you my personal example. I was recently buying a bag. I just needed an office bag for a laptop. And I did no Google search, like zero. All I did was, there were a couple of brand choices that I had, and I had a detailed chat conversation on ChatGPT for weeks. The brand that I finally selected was Nui. It came on Shark Tank as well. And I kept pushing ChatGPT to make sure that is it the right choice. I said, give me other examples and this and that, quality and all that. And basically I was trying to, get complete trust and a confidence from that. And it was a very surprise, and I did buy that bag eventually, but it was such a surprise experience for myself as well, which I just started as a search, but to that level that maybe 3 years, 4 years back, I would have called AI as an hype. But now after that result, most of my conversations are happening on AI, that, give me the exact brand, give me this, give me the entire, details of the nitty-gritties of the brand and everything. So in fact, I'll ask this question to Senthil. I don't know, he doesn't have a speaker. But do you really think that AI is actually right here now, or is it still very overhyped when we really talk about our brand rooms inside, whether it's agency or not. Like 5 years back, I would have said it's more hyped, because it was not on my tables. It was not a conversation. We were still talking on, whiteboards and all, what could be the content, what and all. But right now, everything is being driven through that. So what do you think? It's really there, or is still a lot of hype in marketing space?
See, I still believe it's not in a hype stage yet. Why? Because if you look at certain brands right now, the problem was ChatGPT is mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So always marketing is dependent on tracking the events, right? Tracking how many people are visiting my website.
Right. Right.
So currently there's only limited options that ChatGPT and others are there giving link out. So marketing and team, they are not yet sure the impact, but the impact is real because
Yeah.
4 billion prompts are being made every day.
Exactly.
Versus a Google of 14.5 billion. That
Right.
people are there.
Right.
Now
Right.
we have worked with one brand, that's Reliance Digital. Now what we have seen there is over a period of 3 months, right, we generated almost like 500,000 referral traffic from ChatGPT.
Wow.
Only focusing on the products.
Wow.
But a lot of people are looking at ChatGPT as a recommendation engine.
Yes.
Good.
Yes. Yes.
But what is it recommending? It's not recommending you should buy from Reliance, rather it's recommending a product and the pricing where it is best, and then you go and buy it.
Right. Right.
And there we are competing with Amazon, Flipkart, and the middle of that Reliance Digital is, if you look at it from an offline, it's there.
Yeah.
Online, RP is not that big enough.
Yes. Yes.
But
Yeah.
still we are able to do it, and we were able to see that referral traffic. When the referral traffic coming in, then only we are able to really understand its worth.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We didn't have, we are also thinking probably people are using it, but
Hmm.
not making it. So the marketing wants to be on people where they buy.
Hmm.
That's your main house. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like you mentioned in your PPT as well that, what is it telling about your brand? And, ChatGPT is also a very smart guy, whoever it is, right? When you go back and they miss an option and you say, but what about this? And they say, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I could have looked at this also for you. Let me now give you a description of this. Like you said, it might have given me a comparison of Amazon and Flipkart, but I'll say, can we check it on Reliance as well? So it'll appreciate your thinking that, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let me try and do that. But because, yeah. It is definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's at the end of the day trying to build a relationship with you, which is bad. Good. But yeah, same question to you, Ashish. Like, is it like, do you think it's a hype, or it's still, we are still far away from that to come to reality?
See, I'll answer it in two parts. One, like what we've been talking, as a brand, you can't ignore, like earlier, like you said, we used to be a lot on SEO, right? I think now, rather than being on the search engines, you have to figure out how are you there on these answer engines. You have to be a part of these answer engines. If somebody is asking, let's say, again, to the same example, what's a great brand in the fashion space? Somewhere your name should appear when the AI is answering.
Absolutely.
Because if it doesn't, you're anyways out from the consideration set. And I don't need to explain the funnel. If you're out in the first stage, you can't reach the conversion at all. That's one part of it. Second, I think now I'll go from a marketer's perspective as well. So AI, in my view, is something nobody can ignore, right? As a marketer, you have to live with it. You have to kind of ensure you use it to the best of your capabilities, and it helps a lot. If I see the AI support that one gets right now. Talk about creative churning, talk about rolling out campaigns, hyper personalization at scale. Earlier it used to take so much of time just kind of getting that information out of softwares and others.
Yeah.
Now it's a quick one, right? So it's something you can't live without. Now, the second part of it, is it overhyped? So I would just say that it might be overhyped because some people will say, oh, it can perform everything I do as a marketer. No. So if let's say it's about creating a strategy, a marketing strategy from AI, I'm not very sure there. And I'll tell you why. Because a typical funnel, where we kind of, if I have to talk, we start a campaign from insight. Then we dive into strategy. From strategy flow the creatives, and then we execute, right? So if your insight itself is weak, and you load it onto AI, what kind of a strategy do you expect? And there are so many other factors, internal and external, which the AI may not know at all.
Absolutely.
Till you kind of prompt it and say, oh, and there's still so much more that the humans would know. So AI, in my mind, will just kind of, synthesize all the information which is available. But what should happen in the future that's where I think that's for humans to do.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest fear, even like if you're taking a medical advice or anything for that matter. The point is not what AI knows. The point is what it doesn't know.
Absolutely.
Right? Like if it gave me two options and it doesn't even know third, how much of reliance do I have? And by the moment we are putting in that data as well, while we are doing those chats with AI, we are also kind of contributing to that. Right? So I think that's where it is still very much there, but I think we are still to reach that stage where it has a consolidated, it becomes all equivalent to like a Google. Like Google is probably not biased. I'm sure it would be advertising, but still not very biased, that I'm only relying on a particular feed which is in my LLM. It purges larger base of data and still will give you relevant information.
You gave a great example, on doctors. I'm sure on a lighter note, maybe doctors are having a similar conference saying, is AI replacing us?
Yeah.
Are people just asking? And I've seen a lot of people doing that.
Yeah.
And I've seen people even try with Google. And I've heard doctors in the past saying, oh, if you know so much, please go Google and figure out yourself.
Yeah.
I've been to the doctor and I said, I have this problem, but I think these are the medicines which you gave me have these side effects. He said, I have you read on Google? So, and AI is even at the next level. So it's also there, and that's where a great example, but I still don't think, I'm sure if anybody thinks otherwise, but I still don't think AI is in a position where they can replace doctors and you can just rely on AI and say, oh, AI has told me I will be fine. I don't need to take any medicines and go to a doctor.
Especially
I think there is a corollary with marketing here.
Yeah. Especially if you stop listening to podcasts which says that all the roles will be going away and start becoming a carpenter and all that. So, minding though that's not the reality, because those are the kind of ads I keep getting on Spotify, a podcast ad where everything is being taken away, Microsoft report has come, start becoming a carpenter and a painter and all. That's not the world how it is moving. But that actually brings me towards, we are just almost towards the closure of our conversation. From your personal playbook completely, what is that one principle that you keep coming back to during any kind of decision making that you're having? A marketing principle, or maybe it could be a personal principle as well. I know we have touched upon creativity and AI not taking over whatever, and you also spoke about fundamentals of marketing. But there's that one principle. Like I said, for me it is creativity. I'm still hoping that the Lahori Jira kind of creations are coming from brains. Even Cred, Tanmay Bhatt, we all know, Moonshot, the company he runs. So it is not there. So I still very, very firmly believe that creativity is still pretty much by nature of a human being. But still, what is your one principle?
So if I have to say one principle, personal one is clarity. And that I think supersedes everything else, because clarity and consistency. First of all, you have to be very clear about what you are and, like I said, who you want to serve, etc. And then consistently repeating that again and again. You can have different campaigns, but your messaging has to be in that line, which is, and I'm not going on to brand purpose and all, because that's a different topic, but have a purpose and then kind of be very consistently after that. Because one thing which I see a lot nowadays is a term called virality. I'm sure all of us have kind of heard this. And virality will do what? It's more of algorithmic amplification that we do with the help of AI, and then it suddenly kind of becomes viral. So virality to me is a distribution outcome, right? And virality will pick up whatever you give. It can make confusion or clarity viral, whatever you are in that state.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I'm saying, to me, it's clarity becomes very, very important. You as a CMO or as a brand manager or as a marketing manager have to be very clear about your objectives. What are your brand, what is your brand positioning? What do you stand for? What kind of relevance is your brand creating? So all of that combined, I think for me, it's clarity.
Yeah. So it's like Zomato has to keep saying बारिश में पकौड़े खाने का मन कर रहा है, तो हर साल फिर वही खाने का मन कर रहा है. You can't come back and say आज आइसक्रीम खा लो. So yeah, because that's how we remember a brand, right? The consistency. Okay, let me have a quick rapid fire before we close down.
Sure.
Brand or performance?
I think both, because I'll tell you why. Because brand drives efficiency and performance drives scale.
Okay.
You can't live without, you can't say one of them.
Data or gut?
Data or gut? I would say data-informed instinct, because data can only tell you, what's there, but it's instinct which is there, which comes from experience. One, and two, if I have to take decisions, I know by instinct that what is my team ready for and what is the market ready for beyond data. So both.
Okay. Should I be asking the next two if the answers are both? No, just kidding. Experimentation or efficiency?
Here, experimentation, but it leads to efficiency for sure. It should lead to efficiency rather, and that's where experimentation is useful.
Okay. And what would you like to leave the audience with, like one word for future of marketing? How is it the next 3 years going to look like? Anything that you want to mention?
So one word is, of course, integrator, what I started with. As a CMO in this time, you have to be an integrator, or like I said, a growth orchestrator, which can only come by integrating brand, technology, and revenue. So it's like saying you can't be a good CMO until you have, good commercial acumen, for that matter.
Yeah.
You have to have that now. You have to, or you can't say, this is not my job. Yeah. Don't ask me about numbers. I've done my brand campaign. No, it's not anymore. Second, you have to be very well versed with technology and be updated with stuff like what's happening on the AI side. How are other, brands using AI? So that's one big thing. Two, I think it's also about trust, building trust, because trust to me is the most strategic asset that you have to build over time. It can't be built overnight. So trust for sure.
Yeah.
Three, how will trust come from? I think I was going to say authenticity, but now I understand. I just kind of thinking that it also relates to trust. As a brand, you have to maintain authenticity, because the consequences otherwise can be lethal. And we did speak about social media there, and you're not pardoned for anything or any error. You may not say anything, that's fine, but if you say something which is incorrect, or you are caught by the customer in terms of being inconsistent, that's where the thing becomes viral, and you lose the plot. And then it may take you another couple of years to reach where you are right now. Just one small error.
Absolutely.
So consistency stays, and that will, kind of be there as a principle. And again, maybe one more thing I can say is relevance over reach, right? Because reach can be rented. I'm just saying this much, and you all know what I want to say. So reach can be rented, right? But again, trust is earned.
Yeah.
And trust is earned through the relevance that you create. Your brand has to stay relevant in a customer's mind all the time. And that has to come from consistent messaging and consistency of messaging, which you will do.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
No, thank you. And by that, I will just conclude that let's stop being a cost center. Let's become a profit center, all of us, the marketers. And trust once broken is like a heartbreak. People never forget. So let's try not to do that much. Thank you so much, Ashish. It was wonderful. Thank you, Niharika, and everybody else who participated. Have a great, great evening and a good weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I would request you to just stay back, and I would request Senthil once again to please step on stage. And if you can help us felicitate both of them for doing and conducting such a valuable and insightful session. I think all of us had fun, and we are taking back home lots and lots of insights. Yes or no? I can't hear a yes. Yes or no? Even if it's a no, you can tell them honestly. But thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for doing the honors for all of us. Thank you so much once again. We're really grateful. I think both of you can have a picture together. While I see so many of you walking in together as a group, let me tell you about the timing and the beauty of timing. I officially announce a break now. So, well, as you may please. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's an official break. See you in 10 minutes. Let's keep it 10 and let's not extend it because I know it's a Friday evening. We all have got to, go perhaps party, chill, or whatever plans we have. So see you back sharp in 10 minutes. Thank you.